Cannabis Media programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another live edition of The Green Rush, the business of cannabis talk show on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, your host, but I'm always joined by a good friend. And who would that be? David Rabinovitz. Hi, David. How are you?
Very well, Jimmy.
And I'm going to tease this now. I'm going to let our audience know, because I do see in the chat room, we already have a pretty good audience. And this will be the first time I've been able to actually monitor the chat room as we like to multitask this modern era. We're very excited about the show that we have planned this afternoon, and also very excited about the response that we've had to a lot of our videos on our social media network since the filing of the COA bill at the U.S. Senate by Senators Schumer, Booker, and Wyden last week. We're so proud to welcome in an old friend, someone who is becoming more and more, let's say, camera friendly, Chris, with your own little show. He's the CEO of MJBiz Daily. He's Chris Walsh. Hi, Chris. How are you? Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. No, I still have the face for radio, so the video side, I'm still polishing up my look here.
Well, again, you know what? You're not a dial twister, Chris. Okay, that's the most important thing. And if David Rabinovitz can be on camera, so can you. Okay.
I'm like the Ed McMahon of the show.
That's okay. Nothing wrong with Ed McMahon. He's a good man. Chris, what a week. The fact that I lived to see the day that the majority leader of the U.S. Senate was promoting the legalization of cannabis was incredibly historic, shocking, and yet maybe now, after what we've gone through over the last year and a half, I shouldn't be shocked anymore, and I should just be accepting it and applauding their passion for the cause. What was your reaction to the news conference that the senators held last Wednesday?
You know, I think as you were saying, it's a monumental moment. We'll get to what the chances are of this passing, but regardless, to your point, having the majority leader who has been talking about this for many months, and was he actually going to follow through? Was this a big, was this just a smokescreen? He was just talking about it. Does anything come to fruition? And he actually did make it a key part of his initiative this year. And that is, it's not only that you have a majority leader spearheading this, but you have one who has embraced it fully. And out of all the things going on in this country, in this world, he's made this a pillar of his focus right now. And I think that, to me, is what's even more important than just the fact that this bill has been introduced and that you have the majority leader behind it. It's that he has embraced it fully.
Right. And we have a 163-page document out there that's designed for shows like this, a public discussion about cannabis. And David, I know that you already told Chris what you thought of the summary that MJBiz Daily put out there, but let's make it official and tell him, and then you get to ask a quick question of Chris. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, Chris, as I mentioned earlier, I think what you guys did a great summary. There's been a lot of folks who are trying to summarize what's going on with the bill. Some of them are very long reads, but I think MJBiz, as usual, did a good job of summarizing what it is. What's your impressions? I think nobody in the industry really thinks this bill is going to get over the line, especially in its current form. But
no.
What do you see as the bright sides of all this?
There's a lot of bright sides, and I think it is worth tempering expectations. If you do think and you just read the headlines and you're like, wow, looks like legalization is coming, that's not how this is going to work. I've been surprised many times in this industry, both positively and negatively, on things that happen. So I would not rule anything out. But, as far as myself and MJBiz and most other people see this, this is one of those crucial steps towards the ultimate goal. And I think that when we look back, when and if this happens, when there's a significant federal change, we will turn to this and say, hey, this was one of those key building blocks to get us here. And that's how legislation works, and that's how it works in the cannabis industry. And we've seen it time and time again at the state level. It takes numerous efforts, and it's something starts with an idea, and then you see people talking about, lawmakers are talking about it, and then something's introduced in a committee, and maybe it's shot down, right? And then it finally works its way out of committee, and it only gets passed by one chamber of the House, or only discussed. And then you just build and build upon it. So that's where I see the significance of this. Is there's been a lot of real good thought behind it. And you can tell Schumer is not just, talking out of his butt here, like coming up with things. He understands the industry because he's done the research, he's made the connections, and the other, the other lawmakers involved as well. They're not kind of half-assing this. And I think that that's, to me, significant too, is that they're embracing a lot of the big issues that the industry has, and to make this successful. And it sounds like they've listened and they understand it. And so, I think that is one of the most remarkable things about this. Now, when we talk about what's good and what's bad, it really depends where you are. If you're operating a multi-state operator, big company in multiple states, you're going to have one view. If you're a mom and pop, you're going to have another. If you're a consumer or a patient, there's different things that are important to you all over the spectrum. So what I can say in general, though, is it's a thoughtful proposal on how we as a nation can turn this whole thing on its head finally from the federal level and look to legalize and regulate this in a responsible way.
Yeah, it was interesting. What I saw, one of the comments was like 70% of the US population now favors legalization of marijuana in one way or the other. I don't think anybody in DC has garnered 70% of their constituents voting in favor of them.
And you see that with all the ballot measures in each state. They're getting more support for legalization for medical and recreational than any of the candidates on the ballot or the presidential candidates. It's astonishing. It's clear that the vast majority of people are ready for change.
We had a couple of interesting things happen up here that I just want to share with you and get your impressions as to how it's might impact legalization. So 2016, Massachusetts legalized medical marijuana. When we went to legalize,
David, 2013 is when the medical program started.
2012 we legalized medical. 2016 we legalized rec, and the group that was most opposed initially to legalize recreational marijuana were the medical marijuana operators, because now they had the market to themselves. They didn't want to share it. We just have finally gotten home delivery off the ground, and when home delivery started, the Cannabis Control Commission decided the social equity applicants had really been sidelined in the industry, so they were giving them a 3-year head start. They'd have exclusivity of those licenses. And amazingly, the entrenched operators came out against home delivery. Do you think that there's any segment of the market that's going to come out against federal legalization?
That's a great question. I think it depends what shape it takes, right? If you've got some bill out there and there's key provisions that certain people don't agree with, absolutely they're not going to, I doubt there's many people who would oppose reform to federal marijuana laws. But there are segments that will say what's near and dear to them, and it might be social equity, it might be taxes, it might be big industry versus smaller, and the provisions around all this. You might have some that say, this isn't the bill that I support, and it's got to look different. And that is an issue, right? We've seen that on the state basis. We've seen that with federal proposals in the past. It's hard for the entire industry to coalesce around something because of all the competing interests. So I see this more as there will be opponents to the shape of the proposal, and they may be so strong, their opposition to it, that they say, I'd rather scrap this whole thing and wait a couple years until we come up with something better. I do think that could absolutely happen. And then I will say the illicit market may not support it at all. I mean, as legalization has taken root in states, in some cases, it's actually, the illicit market is doing better, unfortunately. But in others, they feel that they've been locked out of the real industry, and they don't have the skill set or the monies or the money or the business expertise to transition. And they say, well, it used to, even some people that are in the industry that grew out of the illicit market are like, hey, it was actually a better environment for me when it was, fully illegal in the state. So you might have people in that segment that oppose it.
I do want to ask a little bit about Senator Cory Booker. I loved his passion, his orator skills. He was awesome in that news conference, and yet he took some heat about his comment about safe banking. I think we all know that there's been other tries in our government to legalize cannabis. Isn't the big thing, the one thing that the industry really needs is to get it off Schedule 1, at least, if not completely descheduled? Isn't that the biggest thing?
I think it's an important thing, but you will even find differences in that and say, well, if it's just moved down on the Controlled Substances Act, away from Schedule 1, but to Schedule 2, that's bad. Like there are people who say, no, that's going to put it in the hands of pharmaceutical companies and use all these unfriendly regulations. So yeah, I think it depends on where you sit, and there is opposition to just kind of moving it down. Now, taking it off completely, I think, almost everyone, and I can't think of a reason why someone wouldn't support taking cannabis off the schedule of controlled substances.
And once it gets descheduled off 1, doesn't that open up banking and get rid of the 280E clause?
No.
Tell me, David.
Schedule 1 and Schedule 2.
Both. Okay.
You got to go below Schedule 2 to get rid of 280E.
So is there going to be wheel dealing in the halls of the Capitol here, Chris? Because let's face it, the political climate in Washington, D.C. is about as much of a stalemate as I've ever seen in my lifetime, maybe going back to the 60s where you had the pro-war and the anti-war people, and there was a line in the sand there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the situation we're in, which throws all of this up in the air even further, is that the tension and the environment now is that lawmakers on each side don't want to support the other's causes for whatever reason, because they don't want to give them a win, or, it's like, that's where we're at. It's not about, and maybe it's never been about what's good for the people, who knows? Politicians get a bad rap for many reasons, but I do think a lot of them are trying to do the right thing. But now this climate we're in, it's like, even if they might see the benefits of this one side, they don't want to hand the other side a victory that they have been making a big deal out of. Do the Republican leaders in Congress really want to hand Schumer this victory? So I don't know what is going to factor in just from that into whether people are going to support things, not just with cannabis, with anything, but especially with cannabis, because then you're handing what might be perceived as a victory to your opponent, who there's like hatred everywhere, for the other side, which is sad.
It's very sad, and you laugh because it's ridiculous. Okay, it really is, and especially with a issue like cannabis. I think you even alluded to this earlier when you said, look, when you put cannabis on a ballot question, more people come out to vote than ever before, right? I mean, that's a fact. We don't get to argue that. Everybody agrees. Now you've got polls and you've got the populace basically saying, hey guys, figure out a way to get this thing done. And now you've got the polarization going. This is what bothers me about the United States of America. I just don't get it. We have some reason got the old, if you want it, I don't. And that is not America. If we don't figure out a way to talk to each other from across the aisle, we aren't going anywhere. And that's where we are right now. And it's so frustrating for those who can take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And now's the time to make it happen. Now, I am going to say this. We haven't put this up yet, but we do know that there is an email out there that they threw out at the news conference that they are asking for industry supporters to share and take a time to, write your response. Public discourse is good. And that's cannabis_reform at finance.senate.gov. I memorized it. And I also created an animation. At some point, we'll be throwing it up to get people to do it. Chris, what is the MJBiz? When are you guys going to respond publicly? Because you got till September 1st to do this.
We'll look into that and see if it fits. With the media backbone, we stay away from actual lobbying. We stay away from, opinions on things. We support the industry in many ways, but, like if we're going out with a subjective approach and we say, oh, it should be this, or the bill should be like this, that hurts someone else, right? So that's not really our role, but we support the organizations that do in various ways. And then we support the industry. This is up to the industry, to figure out. We can help foster that. in things we do and help shed light on the issues and both sides and bring people together at our conference, to discuss it, and forums to do that. But we shy away from taking positions on things.
Well, as also a little media company that produces a few original programs, we do want to be the voice of the industry. So if the industry does want to have an opportunity to voice, by all means, find me, track me down, not difficult to do it, info@ Pro Cannabis Media, and allow them to come on and talk about it. So again, let's talk a little bit about the event that's finally on the calendar in October. People are already calling me to say, hey, you going? Where'd you doing? So tell us what's on the agenda. I think you guys actually sent out your agenda this week, and talk a little bit about some of the speakers that you already have lined up besides Chris Walsh's opening address.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I always give predictions there, and I put myself out there because it's hard to make predictions in this industry. So I can look like a buffoon sometimes if you predict something, it doesn't come true. But
by the way, I was in sports a long time. We learned don't predict, even though that's the nature of the beast. Go ahead.
And I understand that, and I still do it, but shame on me. But no, I mean, this was a long, hard, 16 months for everyone, right? In many ways, our whole business is based on, a big chunk of it is based on getting people together. So we put a lot of time and effort to coming out of this pandemic and hosting MJBiz Con for the first time since 2019 live, put a lot of effort and resources into doing this well, doing it safely, and doing it right, and really getting back in touch with the industry about how things have changed and where the needs are for people, whether it's, education or getting their name out there or deal flow. So it's kind of all hands on deck, and, we're seeing great traction so far, pacing ahead of 2019 in some key ways, which is great. We ultimately don't know where we'll end up, right? We've never come out of a pandemic in this situation like this before in my lifetime or in a business perspective. So to your point, we're hearing all the time about people who are excited, whether it's MJBiz Con or another event, just to get out there and to get back in person. It's a fundamental part of this industry, and it's how people built their businesses more so than in other industries. So far, everything looks really promising, and we're ready to come roaring out of this and really get a critical mass of people there. So let's talk about where this industry is going. Let's help shape it together. Let's talk about things like we're talking about on this show. What is the potential for federal legalization? What are the concerns? What are the benefits and drawbacks of different aspects of how this can unfold? And how will it ultimately affect all of us and our businesses now? And those are the kinds of discussions. Those are some of the sessions that we've worked into the agenda, along with, some more nitty gritty on how you can improve your yields and your grow operation and all those fundamental business things. What I think is super important this year is, while we'll have that element, it's really on the content side and education side about these bigger discussions, because we're at a pivotal point right now. And we need the leaders and decision makers and all the way down in the industry to the average professional to be part of this discussion. And we need to internally do what we're hoping the lawmakers do. I think we need to approach things with an open mind and find common ground on what we think are the most important things for the industry. Now, there's never going to be here's what the industry says, these are the 10 things, right? But I think we can gain understanding and acceptance and rally around what's truly important, some of those core pillars, and then communicate them as a whole, to the lawmakers that are ultimately going to decide where this goes.
Are we doing any polling to find out in the industry exactly what is the most important thing to the industry? Is it access to the banks? Is it just taking it off the scheduling process? Is there anything in place for that as far as you know?
No, but that's a great idea. Whether we can incorporate something like that into MJBiz Con, where we're going to get tens of thousands of people, and if we can get that critical mass of feedback, that's actually a great idea. So I'm going to talk to the team about how we can help foster that and identify where the industry stands. Thank you very much, Jimmy.
This is what I do, Chris, is I just sit around and think of great ideas all the time and
love it,
and then share them with the world, and everybody runs off and takes them. It doesn't bother me. I just want people to talk to each other. In fact, I think it's great how you are shaping, how you're looking at the convention, because if we could set the example for the Republicans and Democrats to actually talk about the issues, maybe we can find common ground as Americans. And that's one thing that I just want to see it happen. I can't believe I've seen it come this far. Yeah, at this point, I want to see it at least get decriminalized at the federal level and leave it up to the states. And you know what? If that's all it is, I can live with that. Can you live with that?
Yeah, let the states decide. If we can all agree on that and allow that to happen and bake that into federal law, I think we've taken a massive step. And lastly, I know we've got to move on, but I just want to say one of the things that gives me optimism and hope is that as legalization has spread, this is going into red states increasingly, right? So this was when we started in 2011, the most people in it, most people supporting it were what you call Democrats, liberals. It was very, very clear, right? Now it's diversifying. And I think the more people from different backgrounds, different political leanings, it's in their state, they're seeing the businesses, now they're involved in it, they're investing in it, they're starting businesses, they're working for businesses in it. You know, I think that is how we bridge this divide and we can get together at this level, no matter your political background, and agree on what's good for the public, what's good for the industry, and what should be in federal legalization. And hopefully that will ripple out to the federal picture.
Lastly, I would be remiss if I did not mention the passing of a California legend in the cannabis industry this past week, Frenchy Cannoli. Did you have any dealings with him at all?
We did several times over the years. Obviously a legend in the industry and big loss overall. And you know, he represented kind of the old school cannabis marijuana, you know, guy and business person. And now we're seeing this tension between the new business people coming in and the old school. And so, you know, he really represented the old school, and we're trying to find our way as an industry to make sure that what he stood for and what he did for the industry doesn't just disappear into the dustbin of history, and that it's embraced as we go forward. And hopefully, you know, in light of this sad news, you know, we can take what he did and incorporate it in and learn lessons from how can we bridge this with the like business Wall Street people coming in.
Yeah, there's quite a few of those out there in the cannabis space. It would be nice if we could create some kind of an award that goes to the Entrepreneur of the Year in the cannabis industry moving forward, because I haven't heard one negative comment about this guy from the California group over the last week or so since the news hit. So Chris Walsh, again, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in the fall. How about a plug for your new podcast? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm not the sales guy, even though I'm a CEO, but no, I started a new podcast, Seed to CEO, and we're aiming at the mainstream people coming in that are looking for their way in this business, looking to understand it, seeing where they might have opportunities. So talk to all these veterans. I talk to newbies who are successful in the industry and try and share their insights and advice.
There you go. And do you get that, David? Seed to CEO. Did you figure that one out?
I did, Jimmy.
All right. Terrific. Chris Walsh, thanks so much. It's just past 4:20. We're going to take our first break. We've got some other great media representatives coming on to this program, including Bruce Barcott, the editor of Leafly, coming up at 5 o'clock. So don't go away. We'll continue with Green Rush Live after this. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Cannabis Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.